U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is currently in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and the Americans seem happy with the progress they've made. Ukraine has agreed to a 30-day ceasefire, but they require Russia to publicly accept prior to any change of force posture. Intelligence sharing and military support seem to be central to this agreement from the Ukrainians. Those efforts from the United States have been paused by the Trump administration, and as a result of the agreement the Ukrainians have recently made, that will be unpaused, which means immediately there will be the intel, there will be the planned weapons transfers. It seems Trump's bet was right. He had to show Ukraine, by doing that pause, that they can't do this alone. They cannot campaign, they cannot pursue this war absent the United States. Even with all of the bluster we saw from Europe, it was Trump's pause that brought the Ukrainians back to table for peace. And in these moments, the territorial concessions will likely be negotiated during the time period of that ceasefire. In short, leverage worked. The next several days will test Ukraine's readiness to negotiate and understand Russia's position when it comes to territory, security guarantees, and neutrality. The goal here is to facilitate meaningful diplomacy, and it seems both the Ukraine and the United States come out of these Saudi talks with tangible wins. Ukraine alleviated the pause. The United States got the ceasefire that President Trump has been seeking, and the killing on the battlefield may give us some pause and some opportunity to get a more durable and lasting picture of the security situation in Europe. But we wonder, even with what we heard today, does Ukraine really want to end the war? Ukrainian-born U.S. Congresswoman Victoria Spartz thinks they don't, and it's for corrupt reasons.
He, like Biden, who could have the slush funds that him and his friends can funnel the money. The Ukrainian government didn't do sanctions against Russian businesses. They're still making money and splitting the profits with friends of Zelensky. That's why he's so agitated, because these oligarchs actually making a lot of money, and that's who installed him. Now he wants to be an oligarch too. That's why he doesn't like it. It has nothing to do with the interests of the Ukrainian people. They were not really trying to fight the war. They want to make sure that they have money coming from Europe and Americans, especially slush funds, and Biden was sending there with no oversight. I don't think they really want to stop Putin. They want to continue this bloodshed. They want to continue money.
The Congresswoman broke the internet when she accused Zelensky of being worse than Putin.
Of course, he wants to be, dictator there forever. He's taking his military, putting them in jail, anyone who can be politically appointed, some of the best heroes. He prosecutes businesses, nonprofits, took control of the media. He's acting no better than Putin inside his own country.
That's what makes these decisions in Saudi Arabia today so important. Until now, Ukraine had really perfected the art of never taking yes for an answer. And I know what you're thinking. They must have learned that from your first wife. But don't get me wrong. I want Ukraine to win. I do. But at some point, even a UFC fighter has to tap out. And we may be reaching that moment now. That may be what these latest decisions by Ukraine in Saudi Arabia represent. And we know how all this ends. At some point, Ukraine will and must take a final deal. And the best part, when Ukraine finally agrees to peace, they'll turn to the United States and say, well, now we need money to rebuild. And there will be U.S. lawmakers, there will be Republicans who want to oblige every one of those requests. It's like paying for the wedding and then having to pay for the divorce lawyer. Congresswoman Victoria Spartz of Indiana joins me now. Congresswoman, I can't wait to get your reaction on this agreement between the United States and Ukraine to push forward a ceasefire with Russia. But before we get to that, you've just stepped off the House floor. The continuing resolution to keep the government funded has passed. That now travels over to the United States Senate. Do you believe there will be enough Senate Democrats who will join with the Republicans to pass the continuing resolution you just voted for?
Well, listen, I think it's all of the senators always talk about we cannot shut the government down and that we have to keep things open. So let's see what they mean it, because they like to do it when when Democrats are moving these resolutions. Republicans, by necessity, that we had to go continue the spending because we need to help to give President more time. But it will be very hypocritical from them now not to vote for it.
Yeah, we know that you're one of the big cost cutters, and it probably pained you as much as every other fiscal conservative to vote for this. Elon Musk has said that when you look at programs like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, there is fraud. Are you confident that there will still be efforts underway to find fraud in those programs?
Oh, we have to, Matt. If we don't go after that, these programs will go broke and we will not be able to deliver promised benefits for the people. So that's a must. American people are tired of all the waste, fraud, and abuse. And President Trump means business. And he's working very hard to make sure that we save these programs and actually have better benefits for people. And I appreciate what he's doing. I know that he didn't have enough time to deal with all the spending bills, so we need to give him time. And I'm very realistic that he had even a chance to, to have confirmations for all his people. So we need a little bit more time, but I think he's serious about it. Elon is helping him, but Congress will have to step up and put some structures in place. It's actually Congress's fault, to continue the spending and doing nothing about that. So I think we'll have to do better. We need to push on the Speaker to do better, and Senate, especially Republicans in the Senate, need to step up too.
No question about it. Now, let's turn our attention to this fresh ceasefire framework that the United States and Ukraine have negotiated. What's your reaction to the terms as you understand them?
Well, listen, I think, as I said before, President Trump is the only person who actually can push on Russia to get to the table. And I think, Ukrainians really have the only hope in President Trump to stop this war and insanity. And their corrupt government is betraying their people. They wasted a lot of money, and we still need to have accountability for that, where all the money went. But at this point, we need to stop, killing of so many people and actually potential escalation of that war. So I think having President Trump at the table, Ukraine should be pretty, happy about that, not doing what their president done a few weeks ago, which is very embarrassing was for them and very not wise. But I'm glad that President Trump is an adult and cares. He understands he's a strong leader, and he goes beyond that and still willing to put pressure on Russia and work with Ukrainian government to stop escalation.
He seems to be willing to put pressure on both sides, and he's doing it bilaterally and hopefully bringing them both to the table. But you made mention on our program of your skepticism that Zelensky ultimately wanted peace. President Trump had paused the intelligence sharing and had paused the other resources to Ukraine. That got us this 30-day agreement from Ukraine on a ceasefire. Do you think Zelensky right now is actually geared toward peace, or just turning the money back on for the pendency of this negotiation?
Well, I think war, unfortunately, been very lucrative for him and a lot of people around him. A lot of young people are dying, very brave people. A lot of Russians are dying too, but war, some people make a lot of money. So that's why Zelensky was never serious about fighting. He just wants to prolong that war. And President Biden gave him a lot of slush funds, so it was very convenient. Zelensky was installed by oligarchs. Now he decided to become one, and that was very convenient. But we need to stop it, and I think President Trump put pressure on him to get to the table too, and he's the only person who can do it. But I'm not sure, I don't think he's a serious leader, and unfortunately Ukrainians are paying very high price for their government.
Do you think that when this is over, President Zelensky will keep power?
Well, listen, if Ukrainian people are stupid enough to elect him again, then they probably will lose the rest of the country as soon as President Trump is not president. So that's a decision for them to make. But if they continue electing bad leaders, they will continue fail. And Putin knows that. He's an opportunist. He understands what's going on, and he takes advantage of the situation. He had very weak president here in the United States. Biden, he knew what Biden was. He was vice president under Obama when they said blanket, and he knew that there was opportunity. And then he had corrupt and weak president of Ukraine. So that's why he moved. And unfortunately, only strength can deter aggression, and only have strong military and strong country will help Ukraine to deter Russia from and have peace. But that will depend on the people.
What do you think will happen if Russia refuses this deal?
Well, I think, President Trump is very serious, and I think Russia will take it seriously. They know that he means business, and he promised, he ran on the promises to bring peace back to Europe and stop the escalation of this war and have some agreements. So I think he's tough, and I think Putin understands too that President Trump means business. I think Zelensky, for some reason, underestimated him, but I think it's all politics. He's trying to, act like he's such a hero and bashing President Trump back home, so he thinks that he will get more votes in his country, and any Trump supporters he's bashing. I think it's very unwise what he's doing. It's truly for his own agenda, but I don't think it will help his people to have bad relationship with the United States, and Europeans will forget about him quickly.
Final question for you, Congresswoman. Some have suggested that there need to be elections in Ukraine as a part of this peace deal. Do you think that ought to be something that the United States demands?
I think, they need to hold elections. Right now, president centralized power, actually illegally by their constitution. Parliament has much more power, and he's centralizing more and more power, created oppression, coming after his own military in general and putting them in jail, who potentially could be political oppositions. That's not a democracy that Ukrainian people are dying for. So they need to have an election. They need to make sure that we have proper observers, and elections are going to be fair and honest, because I wouldn't be surprised if Zelensky tried to cook the books and actually have fraud in his election. So we need to make sure that international community, including the United States, is watching what's happening and paying attention. But they will need to have elections, because ultimately he's not a legitimate president right now by their constitution.
Congresswoman Victoria Spartz of Indiana, thank you so much for your focus on this area of the world and sharing your perspective.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure, Matt.